But it's because your love withdraws. It's because you're my shoulder. Darling moon, way up high up in the sky. Tell me why you've lost your splendor. Darling moon, when is it cause your love withdraws? Is it because you've lost your love? Mortals have dreams of lives and escape, but they don't realize that love is sometimes brave. Oh, diamond, way up high up in the sky. Tell me why you've lost your splendor. Diamond, it's because your love withdraws. It's because you lost your love. Mortals have dreams and escape. They don't realize love it sometimes brings. Dark moon, way up high up in the sky. Tell me why lost your splendor. Dark moon, because it's because you lost your love. Way up high up in the sky. Tell me why dark moon. High up in the sky. Tell me why say dark moon. Way up high up in the sky. Tell me why dark moon. Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora. I just felt like a bit of a sing-along today. That was TJ and Hootie. They're one of my favourite couples, and they just sort of, for a Saturday, I thought we'd have a little sing-song. And the fact that we've had a super moon, I thought we'd play Dark Moon. So I hope you enjoyed that whānau. I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it, having a little sing-song. So I want to get back to the issue of privilege, the issue of racism, and how the justice system, depending on ethnicity, treat you. And there are a number of reports, and so I know a lot of whānau that don't normally follow me have joined me over the last few weeks and months. And I try and use my platform to inform, educate, not only in the ngangara, that's the whole jabbing, COVID-19 space mandates, issues of vaccine injuries and vaccine deaths, and just the coercion and just just, our country's been turned upside down. We have historical mental, historical and we have historical mental health issues, but it's exacerbated over the last 2.5 years. Not only that, we've got youth that have just gone porangi. And is this what's been happening over the last 2.5 years? You know, the lockdowns, the mandates, the stress. There's more poverty now. Just the whole moving into a social credit system where power is not just being centralised in Wellington, but how our governments have now even further centralised our power, the power that governs us, to the global elite. And just, I'm going to take my glasses off because I've got my laptop in a different space. And I'll talk to you why my space is different, and you're going to see another different space shortly. But that's a whole other issue, whole other taki. But I just think it's really important that we have these uncomfortable conversations, because living through it, having whānau live through it, being the victims of the criminal justice system, the victims of institutional racism. I've had so many lovers, I want to call you out there, who have challenged me, challenged my perspective, and challenged some of the terminology that I use. And I think it's good. And I actually think it's healthy, and I'm not going to turn my back on the issues. It's too important. It's too important to inform and educate, because we feel the racism. My tupuna felt the racism. It's cost lives. It's cost livelihoods. And I think that Sam Uffendale is a really good example of privilege. And I'll call it colonial privilege or Anglo-Saxon privilege. But it's privilege not of my making or my people's making. So don't go shooting the messenger because you feel uncomfortable about the topic. Have the courage to listen through and move through this, because we are feeling a lot of mamai at the moment. It doesn't matter whether you're tangata whenua or tangata te tiriti. We are all feeling the mamai because of what's happened in the last 2.5 years. What you have to understand is my people have been feeling this for 200 years. It's intergenerational trauma, and the system has created that. The system. So if you look at our history that was never taught in our schools, have only just been acknowledged in the last year or so to be taught in our schools. If we had all understood the history rather than Māori only knowing their own pain, then I don't know if we'd be feeling uncomfortable having these conversations that we're having. So I want to start off with Sam Uffendale, and then move on to the criminal justice system and how that seriously impacts on Māori. Right. So there's an article that just came out today, and it said Sam Uffendale was lucky to avoid New Zealand's criminal justice system as a schoolboy, but it was the right outcome. So that's the hero saying that this is the right outcome, that he avoided the criminal justice system, but it is the right outcome. Keep that in mind. And then going through, it says that the National Party has selected someone who once committed an act of criminal violence to represent the Tauranga electorate in Parliament. It is unfortunate move for a self-styled party of law and order So it's an unfortunate move for a self-styled party of law and order, right? So they want to go hard on gangs and the traditional gangs. I'm not talking about the 501s that come from overseas, but the traditional gangs in New Zealand were established because of racism, institutional racism, and colonisation, and the theft of Māori resources, land, culture, to me. So you know that, or you get a gist of that history. The criminal justice system in itself is being used to lock up my people. And I can hear you now saying, well, if you don't do the crime, and you won't do the time. Well, here's the thing. If you happen to be of a certain ethnicity and you do the crime, you won't do the time. And that's the point I've been trying to highlight for the last few days. Okay, so what this is about national. It is an unfortunate move for a self-styled party of law and order, but perhaps it should be welcome. If the party is able to forgive Sam Uffindale, then perhaps it's also time for bipartisan efforts to make the justice system itself more forgiving. So basically what this article is saying, if we're going to show privilege to Mr. Uffindale, and don't get me wrong, I've seen him on the news and I've actually felt aroha for him and his whānau. At a human level, I actually felt empathy for him and felt really sorry for him. So just saying that. But what this reporter is saying, let's create an opportunity. If this is privilege, if this is what privilege looks like for people that represent the Uffindales in this world, then why don't we share that privilege? Sorry, my phone's just gone off. So why don't we share that privilege, and let's create an opportunity and be a more of a forgiving system. So that I think is a great insight from this journalist. There have been more allegations about Uffindale's past behaviour, and the National Party has begun an inquiry. So they've got a QC onto the job, right? And they're talking about this 13-year-old boy that was seriously assaulted with a blunt weapon. Now, so we'll put that to the side. And I want to come to this next article. And thank you all for tuning in, Jenny, Lib, Johan, Alexandra, Tina. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name. It's no intent to be disrespectful. Zeth. Thank you all, guys, for tuning in. So there was a Stuff article that was done in 2016. So this is a few years ago, whānau? This is like 6 years ago. And it goes on about the article's title says, New Zealand racist justice system, our law is not colorblind. Because one of the things that we were taught in law school was the law was colorblind. It didn't see color. So every person would be treated the same. Now we know from my community, we know that has never been the case, right? Absolutely never been the case. I don't know if you remember this Māori father who was fishing for trout, right? Fishing for trout. I think he caught about 10 trout to feed his whānau, and he got imprisonment for that. And then there was another person of Anglo-Saxon heritage who was done for drink driving and manslaughter, and he got home detention, killing a number of his whānau, and also I think a whānau and a family friend. So and we've seen that time and time again, where youth have been imprisoned for stealing pineapple lumps, and youth that have stolen $80,000 just for the heck of it, got away with no imprisonment. So there's something systemically wrong, and with our system. And if we want to get justice for ourselves now, then we have to look at past injustices as well, because there's not a time limit of injustices, right? There's not a time limit. But I want to read this article because it's brilliant. It says, in a week when the justice system stood accused of affording soft treatment to the son of a rich lister, consider this judgment from another case. It's from a judge in Christchurch addressing a young man who stood before him for sentencing. Parliament did not say that if you are a member of a particular race, culture, or ethnic group, this means on its own that you are entitled to a sentencing discount. The law, it seemed he was saying, was colorblind. That involved a 25-year-old man convicted of manslaughter after a passenger in his car was killed in 2013. The defense lawyer has sought to have the judge take into account that his client had suffered social deprivation as a Māori, a proposition the judge resoundingly rejected. The case from this week involved the son of a wealthy winemaker who knocked unconscious a police officer in a vicious assault, but escaped a prison sentence after the judge took into consideration his background and the fact that he would pay his victim $5,000 reparation. Now, this is an attack on a police officer. In many ways, it's unfair to compare the two cases. It's a crude juxtaposition. But in a week when there have been cries of WHITE privilege, and this is in the article, when the case of the rich lister's son led even the police association to say that had he been a poor brown boy, he would have been sent to had he been poor and brown, he would have been sent to jail. It's fair to ask, are you treated differently depending on your ethnicity? Is there institutional racism in this country? And more pointedly, is our justice system racist? And then what it does, it looks over data. This article looks over data over the last 10 years and comes up with some conclusions about that data. And it's something that I'm already aware about. I'm already aware of. But I don't know if the majority of our community, apart from those that work in that space, are actually aware of the huge concerns. And so, I've stated in many lives, and data speaks volume, right? So, Māori are 11 times more likely to be maimed and killed by police than their counterparts, right? Māori are 4 times more likely to go to court, 4 times more likely to be profiled, 7 times more likely to be sent to jail, 13 times more likely to be shot and maimed by police compared to their UK counterpart, who also has 13 times our population. So when people are saying that I am racist because I'm highlighting privilege in our system and I'm highlighting privilege in our society, wake up. Because if we don't wake up to it, to the issues, then things are going to get worse for my people. They're already they were already in a social crisis before COVID-19. They're in a worse state Now, for example, and I'm running for mayor here in Kirikiriroa in Hamilton, there's 1,000 families with children that are homeless. And homeless doesn't mean sleeping on the street, whānau, or sleeping in the car. Homeless actually means that you're going from one whānau member to another whānau member, you're couch surfing, you're sleeping in the car. You don't have to be sleeping, or you're sleeping in a shed, in a garage, with a bed in a garage. That's homelessness, right? So these are major, major concerns, and they're not getting any better. And so I've put my hand up for mayor, not because I want to, I'm going to give it a good go, but more importantly, it's important that we highlight the issues to the community and we educate not just the community, but the community leaders of some of the issues that are impacting on my whānau and my community. And you would have seen the inequity video that I did of the $100 race, and how that visually showed you just it's called the race of life, right? And how and if you haven't seen it, go to my yesterday's live, and it'll come up, and it's very, very, very powerful. So the fact that we have the highest imprisonment rate in the world, in the OECD countries in the world, of our wahine Māori, and we have the second highest for our Tāne Māori in the world. So we are the most incarcerated people in the world. And part of the problem for me, and I've done plenty of lives, so some of you have been following me for years, some of you have only just jumped on board. So you don't really know how I tick, how I think, and my expertise. But if I can give you a quick summary, I've worked in the RMA space with local government, and I've also worked in the criminal justice space, as well as I'm an expert in workplace bullying. So, pretty much born an advocate. But that's ratcheted up more because I hold a master's in law, and so I have the ability to think within the legal framework, and then look at impacts on how our legal framework can impact on communities as well. So, looking at the law from a number of different perspectives. But the stats is an indictment on our country, and they are not getting better. They're actually getting worse. So we could potentially, I haven't got the up to date, like the current date stats, but I do know in the last couple of years it's gone up by 2%. So I think Tāne Ma, our Tāne that are in prisons, maybe sitting around the 53%. And that's coming from a population of about 17%. And then there are all the poverty and health issues as well, that impact on those stats. Now, I wanted to, I'm trying to find the piece in this article. It's a brilliant article, and I'll actually copy it, and I will put it in the messenger so you can see. I want to do a couple of share a couple of videos, but I won't do it in this live. So this live is just me and you having the conversation, right? But I do. Maybe it's another article I was reading. Oh, here we are. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong article. So. Okay, so here's just some stats for He Māori whānau, for our Māori whānau. 70, and this is about our prison population. So 77% in prison are victims of violence. 64% of people in prison have suffered a traumatic brain disease, compared to just 2% in the general population. 2/3 of the people in prison do not have basic literacy skills. More than 90% of the people in prison have mental health and or addictions. 23,000 children currently have a parent in prison. The government spends more money on locking our people up. So only a couple of years or so ago, it was about 110. 2020 was around $110,000 a year to lock up one person. So that's what it cost us, you and I, to lock up one person. And now that's hitting $190,000 a year to lock up one person. So there's a whole industry created around locking up people, right? And the governments, or even subsequent governments, spend on housing isn't on housing itself, it's on prison. Building new prisons. So that's their housing policy. And yeah, again, that's an indictment on us as a society. Yeah. Okay. So the justice system is a tool of colonization. Early on in the colonization process, European settlers instigated policies that forcibly stole Māori identity, language, and whenua, and created a foreign system of justice that actively diminished the role of tikanga Māori. In restoring balance between those who had harmed and those who had been harmed, colonization created a cycle of intergenerational trauma that still affects Māori to this day. The forceful taking of Māori land resulted in Māori having less resources and wealth than Pākehā, and this unfair economic reality pushes more Māori towards acts of survival that get punished by the justice system. Institutional racism results in state locking up more Māori than non-Māori. Social services, police and courts hold an active bias against Māori, making decisions that are more harshly punished if you are Māori than if you are non-Māori for the same crimes. And I just gave you a good example. The structural racism also continues to play a role in the state's forced removal of Māori children from their whānau. The prison system is a failure. There were no prisons before colonizations. So you got to remember that, whānau? There are no prisons before colonization, and prison structures do not fit with te ao Māori, which is a Māori worldview. Rehabilitation of those who have harmed does not and cannot occur through imprisonment. So there are many ideas, and I've even been part of some of these workshops with, in regards to Māori-led community initiatives and policies that will stop the perpetuation and that whole conveyor belt of our people going through the justice system. So there's about all up about $7 billion a year spent between corrections, our judiciary, and the police. $7 billion a year. So that's an industry, folks. That's an industry. And I've said in the past, in previous lives, that this taniwha, called the criminal justice system, needs to be fed. And it's my people that is the kai for this taniwha. So, yeah. I think just for this kōrero, I mean, I can go on and on and on, and the stats are there. I will put this article up for you guys because I've only just cherry picked some of the good bits, and then you can have a read of it in your own time. But I just wanted to share this with you, um, just so yeah, just that we have I guess you cannot resolve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. And resolving this issue, not everything is about racism, is about a racist system and racism. um, but for us, from our perspective, it has a huge impact on our lives, our livelihoods. And and the Sam Uffendale now has become the poster boy to highlight the differences and the privilege, and where there's privilege and where there isn't privilege. So, whānau, I'm going to tune out now. I hope you enjoyed that. Uh, so, yeah, there's a lot of information out there. Go on to Uncle Google if you don't. I've always said to people, don't trust what I say. I'm not your one source of truth. This is purely my perspective, and pretty much that's where it sits. And a lot of it's based on my own experience and the mahi that I've done in the past. Like you, I want a better future for all our children and for all our mokopuna. So kia pai tō pō. Have an awesome, awesome Saturday night. Later on, I'm just going to play a Russell Brand video and Neil Oliver one as well. And I might do them separately and just have them as something for you to consider. Thank you all again, Lib, Tina, Crystal, Lois, Adia. Awesome. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, that's right. You cannot change what you don't know. So please do not attack the messenger, because I'm trying to share what is our reality. And if you haven't, enough stated, if you haven't walked a mile in my shoes or lived a day in my life, because on a daily basis we deal with racism. Like, for example, and I'll just give you this as an example. My mokopuna plays netball, and was it last week they played a team where one of the girls grabbed one of our girls, and it's a kura, so it's a whare kura, grabbed one of our girls' hair, yanked her, and she pulled her back, and she fell on her back on the ground. Now, the coach and the manager was really upset, as were the parents that were watching it. So straight after the game, they went up and laid a complaint. That complaint went nowhere. Then the manager of the netball team wrote a letter in to the centre to highlight this issue, and nothing was done about it. And they played the same team today, and there was no reprimand, right? And what you see too, you're seeing the bias in young umpires as well. And we as Māori, I've dealt with it when I was playing sports, and it's something that you live with, but you know what's happening, that if you weren't a certain colour, then you'd be treated more fairly rather than being biased against if it was a Māori team playing a non-Māori team. And we've lived with that all our lives. Doesn't matter if it's netball, rugby, league, whatever. It is what it is, right? Now, but these are children, right? These are children. These were young umpires, so the umpire didn't do anything. The manager went and laid a complaint at the office. Then all these emails were going to and fro, and they had laid their concerns. Nothing was done, and the centre said, "Oh, we thought you should have come and got us straight away, stopped the game." Well, it wasn't for them to stop the game; it was up to the umpire to stop the game. They went up after the game, and now what? The discussions that I've had with some of the whānau is that if that was a Māori girl that had done that, and it was not a Māori kura, but another kura, um, uh, basically we were saying if that was a Māori girl, she would have been reprimanded. She would have been reprimanded. So the bias, my point that I'm trying, and don't hate on me because this is real life for us. We have to put up with this stuff on a daily basis. I've had to, my children have had to, and now my mokopuna. So it's intergenerational, and my tupuna have had to deal with it, but it cost them their lives, right? So we're dealing with behavior that if that behavior is not held accountable, and I'm talking about 12, 13-year olds that age, if there are no consequences of that behavior, because that young girl actually laughed at the girl when she was on the ground, and there were comments coming from the sideline about her behavior. But my point is, if there are no consequences of that behavior, then you'll have more Sam Uffendales, is my point. So even at a fundamental level, at a sporting level, I can give you many, many examples of racism, like even on the rugby field, in semis and in finals, and it really ratchets itself up when it's semis and it's finals, right? So you have to be extraordinary to win because you're dealing with people's biased, right? They say it's human nature. My point is, if we can't have this conversation and I can't share the experiences, and then we don't have consequences to those bad behaviors, we are going to have more Sam Uffendales, period. Now this child, even though it was a pulling off the hair and yanking down, she's traumatized. She's traumatized. What Sam Uffendale did is he used a blunt instrument, and he's lucky. I mean, there's a fine line with assault between assault, looking at someone dying from that assault, and you spending your life in prison, and a difference between the whole system turning a blind eye and you become a politician. I am saying we don't get given the same privileges. Normally, I'm saying we as Māori do not get given the same privileges. And I just wanted to highlight what's happening with my mokopuna, because I've experienced, you ask any Māori, we have experienced that. People say it is what it is. Well, we don't have to accept it. We don't have to accept that behavior as being normal, because what we've ended up with now is a government who thinks coercion and the breach of our Bill of Rights and our human rights is normal. It's another way of looking at it. Okay, I'm going to love yous and leave yous. Have an awesome weekend. I'm going in to cook my mokopuna their dinner now, and take care. It's always a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Kia pai tō pō, kia ora ra. Ka kite.